What's up, you diehards, you degenerates, you lovers of defensive football? This is Josh Raymer, and we are back with another episode of the Big Three IDP podcast. You thought we were done after the Thursday night live stream, but no, sir. The Big Three never stops grinding. I am here joined in the virtual Sode Shack tonight by the one and only, the irreplaceable PFF Macri. John, how are you, my friend?
I am pretty good. It's been a fun 3 days of players' names getting called and landing spots finally getting cleared up, and yeah, it's been a blast. So I'm excited to talk about our kind of like immediate reactions to some of these guys, and yeah, finally start drafting them too in IDP leagues.
That's right. So we're trying to get you right. I know some rookie drafts, they're sickos, like they'll happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of time to digest. We gave you all our immediate reactions on the pod Thursday night, which if you haven't checked that out. Go back and listen to it. It was a lot of fun. That was my first live stream. John, we talked about it a little bit off air and in the, Friday and today. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was cool to see, and you'll hear tonight, some of our opinions have changed from when we first had that kind of gut reaction to people like Micah Parsons, landing spot. Do we like it? We weren't maybe as hot on it then. Things have changed a little bit in these past couple days. We're also going to talk about some of the landing spots for players who were taken in these later rounds and ones that we like. We've got a top 10 list of best landing spots for IDP. And then we've got, 4 landing spots, John, that were not so ideal.
Right.
So we got you covered on both ends of the spectrum. John, we like to call the draft, we like to call it Christmas in April.
Yes.
Unlike Christmas, though, it doesn't end after one day. Have you been able to soak it in? It was a little bit different last year. They were still able to have it, which was kind of amazing, even with the pandemic just kind of kicking off when the draft was happening. But it was in Cleveland. You're a Browns fan. It was a little more normal this year. What was it like? Was it everything you hoped it would be after months and months of buildup?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the draft itself, absolutely. It's funny. I didn't watch any of like the ESPN or NFL Network stream. Being a PFF guy, when I was watching the draft, I put on the PFF live stream. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think you get a clearer analysis from the PFF picture than you do from the NFL Network, who may not want to skew negative for some guys when they're especially if you take a running back in the first round or something like that. But so I didn't get to see the crowd, anything like that. I've seen like the highlights of it on online, so that's been cool to see that there's still people there going and having a fun time.
It's because it's a TV spectacle, right?
Yeah.
Like when you have great streams, and PFF was definitely my favorite stream that I saw. You all's coverage was amazing. They've got that baller studio there in Cincinnati at the HQ that's looking good. But you're right. The one drawback of network coverage typically is these guys have relationships. They've talked to players. They're going to be talking to coaches and GMs. So they don't want to just come out and just rip a draft pick or a player or a coach or a GM. They tend to tread lightly and skew very positively. So you come away with sort of this rose-colored glasses recap of the draft. And I agree with the way that streaming and equipment costs have come down. A lot of these kind of ancillary companies like PFF have been able to do these streams at a very, very high level. I would argue a broadcast TV level, and you get much better analysis because these dudes they don't have the agenda. They don't have the connections or relationships to worry about as much. They're much more impartial and can give you a better outlook on what does this pick mean for this team? Was this a good move or was this a bad move? They were able to basically eviscerate the Raiders for every pick that they made all weekend, John.
Yeah, pretty much.
Man, what a weird. I've definitely seen, of course, every year you have the winners and losers from the draft, but it seems like the Raiders are going to end up on a lot of analysts' losers list.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, and yeah, they keep making these weird first round picks. They make like their later round picks tend to be okay. There's still some weird ones in there, but when it comes to first round picks, I mean, they seem to be way off the board, and it's not like they're hitting on these guys and proving people wrong either. Like with Cleveland Farrell or Jonathan Abram, Damon Arnett, even guys like that. So it's interesting. I responded to Mike on Twitter. He shared with me like a quote on from an analyst talking about how Mayock seems to be kind of like way off the board a lot of the times, and people are noticing this. And if he does get fired after this year, it'll be interesting to see. Like he was respected as an NFL draft analyst on NFL Network. Do you think he still holds that kind of clout there? Like, I don't know. Like, I think it would be hard to kind of take him as seriously, I think, knowing some of the players that he personally has chosen. I don't know.
Knowing you got the big boy chair and you went out and just pissed down your leg for about 4 straight drafts and didn't take one player that was an impact player. Yeah. Even Josh Jacobs, who we love as a fantasy player, they go and get Kenyon Drake. So it's like, do they really like Josh Jacobs, the player that seems to have been their best draft pick? I don't know. And then Leatherwood was a second round guy in most people's eyes. So that was the tweet that Mike shared, I think, was like, they don't have a good grasp on player value.
Right.
That's why you see a lot of those picks that seem to be reaches compared to what the consensus analysis is.
Yeah, for sure. Even taking Henry Ruggs, right, last year over Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. So there's a whole bunch of them, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because you can do that if the picks pan out.
Right.
But thus far, the Raiders have not earned that respect or that benefit of the doubt because these players have not been who we thought they would be.
Yep.
So, we could bag on the Raiders for a while. But let's bag on some other places, some teams that didn't necessarily make a bad pick, John, but that for the fantasy value of these defensive players, these players did not land in ideal spots. And again, this is going off of one or 2 days worth of reaction, or just a couple hours worth of reaction for some of these guys. So not to say that they won't pan out, just that the outlook right now isn't the best.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the point, right? Like if you're looking for, first year production out of these guys, or you like them in the pre-draft process, there's probably reason to kind of cool off on them a little bit now.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it with a player that I know Mike Wollert was very high on. We talked on the preview pod on Tuesday with Mike about Chaz Surratt lands in Minnesota there, the 3rd round pick, number 79, the linebacker. Remind me where he was from.
He was from North Carolina.
So this is a guy I felt like who's been pretty decisive. I know you said that you weren't necessarily the biggest fan. Mike really liked him. He thought he might be one of his most rostered players, but landing there in Minnesota, he ends up on your worst landing spots for IDP list. Why are you a little bit cold on this landing spot for Surratt?
Yeah. So for me, and Mike wasn't alone, like in liking Surratt. He was a really popular name in IDP circles from what I saw. And I think he's an exciting player to watch for sure. Like, he's a good like blitzer. He racks up pressures and sacks. He does that well, but it's also only his 2nd year playing linebacker. He was a former quarterback before playing linebacker, and it definitely shows. He doesn't have those defensive instincts. Figuring out his role is a bit of an issue for him, unless he's playing like a simple man coverage or he's actually blitzing. He does seem a little bit more lost out there than most of these linebackers I found. So he still goes in the 3rd round, which is not bad draft capital, but he goes to a team like Minnesota, who have players like Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr basically solidified as their top 2. And as much as you see Mike Zimmer's defense play like a base defense still a fair amount, there's other guys that are, a little bit better at the position there, even like a Nick Vigil, who they brought in this offseason. Troy Dye, I don't know. Well, I was never a big Troy Dye guy, but he's there too. And he could play ahead of Chaz Surratt for all we know. For me, it's the opportunity I don't think is there for year 1. And I mean, if he doesn't get better at the position, learning from Mike Zimmer and his defensive coaches, it's going to be hard for me to see any kind of IDP value coming from him, at least in Minnesota. I think if he can, make his way on special teams at first, That's a good way for him to kind of stay on the team. But it's hard to imagine maybe he gets an Eric Wilson type thing like this year where there's injuries in front of him and he gets an opportunity. But the way that depth chart is right now, I have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, I got to thinking about the draft. I was on the mower today, and whenever you're on the mower, you get to thinking. It's like shower time. You have great kind of deep thoughts, and I thought at a more intellectual level about kind of the absurdity of the NFL draft and how a lot of these rookies are heralded as franchise saviors, right? Like
Right.
there was literally a story that I saw circulating about Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars think they have found their savior, and it's so funny because if you looked at any other business when typically people fresh out of college are hired, they are in no way looked at really in any other business, any other line of work as the savior of X or Y business, right? Like
Right.
typically these are like people who start at the bottom and have to work their way up. And so when we remove kind of the shiny veneer and these optimistic pipe dreams that we have around some of these rookies, and think about it just more logically, it's like they're coming into an organization where there are people already there, just like a normal business. I wouldn't expect to walk into a publishing company and immediately be the most important employee at that company. That would be absurd, especially fresh out of college. Even if I had a prolific track record in college, I know that I'm going to have to come in and earn experience and get good at my craft and learn how to work with people. And so it is kind of funny. We just get so overly optimistic about these rookies because we saw what they did in college, and we think that's immediately going to translate and they're going to see these high levels of success. And it's like, no, maybe like 25% of these guys go on to have long, sustained, successful careers, Right. So yeah, Chaz Surratt is kind of the perfect illustration of that, of like, this is not a guy that's going to come in and earn the job right away. He's got two very capable incumbents in front of him who are well compensated, who have been there a while. And so he's going to have to play special teams and earn a spot on this team.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty good analogy. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I just got to thinking about it. I was like, in no other industry, it's just like, oh, we just hired this 22-year-old, junior accountant out of Western Kentucky University. Like this is the employee we've been waiting for, the missing piece for this, No, like it's a entry-level hire, and maybe they'll stick around, maybe they won't. But in the NFL, it's like Trevor Lawrence is now the most important Jacksonville Jaguar player on the roster by about 10x.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably like their most important player of all time, if you ask
exactly
players, right? And there's certainly guys that kind of fit that bill that come in and can be like major contributors right away. But for the majority of these players that are drafted, it's not even close. So I think a lot of guys do fall in that Chaz Surratt kind of role in the depth chart.
All right, so let's talk about another linebacker that I was surprised to see end up where he did, and it was one that I saw, I think you were tweeting about or maybe DMing about, why is this guy still on the board? I can't figure out what's going on here. It's Jabril Cox, the linebacker from, let's see, Notre Dame? No, where was he from, John?
LSU.
LSU, that's right, LSU.
Yeah,
so ends up in Dallas, round 4, pick 116. What had you down on the Cox landing spot?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, Dallas, they have Jalen Smith, they have Leighton Vander Esch, right? So we figured that those two were solidified as the starting linebackers already. Then they go and use the 12th overall pick on Micah Parsons, who was kind of the consensus number one linebacker. I mean, really, he is the consensus number one linebacker in this draft. He goes 12th overall. And as much as I really do like his landing spot, spoilers, he's in my top 10 list. Because I do think he comes in and plays right away. It's hard to imagine Jabril Cox also coming in and playing right away. I mean, how many linebackers can you support in Dallas? I saw a thing too, that Keanu Neal, they're still calling him a linebacker. We're just going to call everybody linebackers. Apparently, Dak Prescott is a linebacker who sometimes lines up at quarterback on every single snap. So it's
It works out well for that franchise tag number. I'm sure
Yeah,
linebacker is not a position that gets paid very highly. So yeah, that's actually a great strategy. Don't designate anyone as a left tackle or a
right.
quarterback or a cornerback. Designate them all as linebackers, and then your salary cap is going to be no problem.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, so I think Jabril Cox, another guy, I really liked him coming out of LSU, and he played in North Dakota State in 2019, so in the FCS, and he played a very similar role to what Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has been playing at Notre Dame in that overhang slot cornerback linebacker role, and he's been really good in coverage, and I thought that's what would kind of boost his stock a little bit. Just being a good coverage linebacker in today's NFL, I think helps your chances of staying on a team and getting playing time. But it's hard to see at this point. But the one thing with him was that when he did transition from transfer from North Dakota State to LSU, he played more of that traditional off-ball linebacker role and struggled a little bit in the box, getting off of blocks, flowing to gaps, things like that. And it affected his run defense grade, went to a 55.0. So I think maybe that's what caused him to fall a little bit. But Dallas, again, they like taking their chances on these guys that flash and show some good traits and attributes. So I think maybe, we'll see what happens with Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. I don't think Vander Esch is going to be there long term. Jalen Smith, we'll see, that contract is pretty big. But for this year, unfortunately, Jabril Cox, who was PFF's LB6, he ended up around that range for me too. Ends up as the 12th linebacker drafted in a pretty crowded linebacker room in Dallas now.
Yeah, what was it? If you go, PFF, obviously we trust their eye for talent, and LB6 to LB12 drafted, was this just a case of teams making bad picks, or do you think there were some legit concerns that caused him to slide?
So there was some that I thought were kind of questionable, for sure. Like, so with Jabril Cox taken in the 4th round, like I was personally one that liked him more than Chaz Surratt. I know PFF did as well. Ernest Jones, another guy who went to the Rams in the 3rd round, was one that I wasn't even really paying attention to because I didn't think he showed anything kind of special, where at least Jabril Cox was good in coverage. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the NFL knows better than most people, but at the same time, they also miss on a lot of things. So for me, it was questionable, but we'll see what happens with any of these guys that were drafted ahead of him. But yeah, I did like Jabril Cox a lot. It was just more that he had trouble playing a traditional linebacker role, and in a similar vein to how Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah fell a little bit, that role that they both played, that slot corner overhang linebacker role doesn't really exist in the NFL. So maybe teams had a hard time kind of picturing where they fit in their defense.
Yeah, I always joke with Allie that I have this condition where I can't walk into an empty house and visualize what it could be. Like when we were house hunting, the 2 times we've been looking at houses, she's like, we could put this there and move that over there. And I'm like, Allie, I just can't see it. My brain does not work this way. It's very strange, but I can't visualize a physical space being transformed unless I actually see it. And so maybe that was the curse here with these NFL teams of like, we just can't picture what Cox can do with the role that he played in college versus how that translates to the pros. I did want it to bring up because, again, what signal are the Cowboys sending here, taking 2 linebackers in the first 4 rounds when that position didn't seem to be a huge glaring weakness for them? Leighton Vander Esch's contract they can pretty much get out of at any time and save money against the cap. But with Jalen Smith, they can actually save money against the cap next year cutting him. So you have to wonder, does Micah Parsons phase out Vander Esch, and then maybe they're hoping Jabril Cox phases out Jalen Smith, and they can ride with these 2 cheaper, second-year linebackers next year with both the other contracts off their books? Who knows? I don't know that. I know the Cowboys love Jalen Smith, Jerry Jones in particular, with him overcoming the drop foot. They gave him the big contract. So he's a sentimental guy. This is what some of the problems that crop up when you have an owner, he's also your GM, is sometimes he gets overly attached to guys. Now, if I was a player, I'd love to play for the Cowboys because it means you're going to get paid and you're going to get taken care of.
Mhm.
But for fantasy purposes, sometimes it means, and team building purposes, sometimes it means that players stick around a little past when they should be gone.
Yeah.
But another guy, another linebacker who landed here on your worst landing spot list, I'm going to call him, I don't care how it's pronounced. I'm going Cameron McGroin, the linebacker out of Michigan, lands with the New England Patriots in the 5th round at pick 177. I think this is technically McGrone. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's McGrone, but yeah, that's okay. We could call him McGroin.
It feels like a McGroin shot for IDP owners based on this landing spot, it seems like. But you could also say that they're McGroning. So I think
nice.
either way we're covered here. But what was it about? Is it just New England and kind of the IDP assets that come out of this team aren't ever really attractive or sexy, or was there something else at play?
Yeah, I think that's it for me. Like I kind of did a list of my guys that I really liked, and wrote an article about it. And McGrone was the only one that didn't kind of survive as much for me. So he ends up in New England. We know Dante Hightower's coming back from opt out this year. They got Jawan Bentley. Adrian Phillips played a ton of linebacker for them last year. They also have Kyle Duggar there, who played in the box quite a bit. So he's got quite a few names to kind of jump on the depth chart to be relevant, I would think. The good thing with him is that he's only 20 years old. He's one of the younger players in this draft, and I liked what I liked about him was that he plays in a very similar style to like a Nick Bolton. He may not be as good in coverage, but he flies to the ball, he hits hard, and I think he can develop in Bill Belichick's system, and it's a good system to kind of learn in and get better, because there is definitely parts of his game that he needs to get better at. And as much as I was hopeful that he'd be a day one kind of starter for IDP, I knew it was unlikely, and unfortunately that seems to be the case here with McGrone in New England.
Yeah, only 20 years old, though, so that's nice. We like rookies that are drafted that have that young draft age, because it means even maybe if year one the landing spot is not the best, that he has the potential to, as he ages. I mean, 20 years old, that's young coming into the league.
Yeah, for sure. Some of these guys on this list are like 23 already. I think Chaz Surratt's 24, so he's definitely one of the younger ones.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's move here. This one hurts my heart because this was one of the safeties that I was very excited about. Number one on a lot of people's lists, we're talking about Trayvon Merrick, the safety who lands in Las Vegas. One of I think 8 safeties they drafted. That number may not.
10 safeties.
Yeah, 8 to 10 safeties. This is the guy out of TCU. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. It was TCU. He appeared to be pretty much, again, everybody's consensus number one safety in mock drafts and pre-draft rankings, things like that. Ends up being the 3rd safety taken, which isn't bad. Like, that's not the reason that I put him on here is for bad landing spots. I still think that he'll come in and start right away for the Raiders. But in Dan Quinn's defense, he runs a lot of single high, whether it's cover 1, cover 3, whatever it happens to be. He unfortunately probably fits that deep safety role in that defense more so than the other names that are on the team. So thinking about somebody like Jonathan Abram, for example, he's definitely not a deep safety, Abram. He's not a good coverage player. He's more in the box, hits hard, and plays that more kind of linebacker-ish role. Even the guys that they drafted after Merrick in this draft, like Divine Diablo, for example, was I think asked by a lot of the teams that drafted him to play linebacker. So he's not going to be playing that deep safety role either. He's much bigger. So Merrick, we know, strong safety over free safety for IDP purposes, just because it's more stable. They get the tackles. They're around the ball a lot more. So this hurts Merrick. I did think he was a more versatile safety and could play any role, but in this defense specifically, if they do stick with that single high scheme, I think it kind of hurts him for IDP.
I remember Tripp talking about that was one of the big needs he saw. I think it was actually the last one we talked about on the pod with him, was the deep safety role for Las Vegas. So as far as picks go, even though they took a lot of these guys, that it's actually a nice move because it fills a position of need. But for Merrick's IDP value, it takes a little bit of a hit. It seems like, John, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that I try to relate this back to the Colts when I can because it helps me with the frame of reference a little bit. But Abram is kind of the Kari Willis, whereas Merrick's coming in to play the Julian Blackman role.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. And if you look at those guys, box scores from last year, their game logs, you'll see which one you want to own in IDP. And it's Kyrie Willis who plays, more of that strong safety role.
Yeah, there you go. So not a knock on Abrams' value at all.
Right. Not for that. Not for the Trayvon Merrick pick. The one maybe that potentially hurts Jonathan Abram, I think, is Divine Diablo. I think Divine Diablo actually is a really good box safety. He's got good size. He could cover well. Even if he is playing more linebacker, if they decide that they want to continue with good coverage players instead of somebody like Jonathan Abram, who's not a good coverage player, to say the least, then, I think that could hurt him. But, maybe for this year, he'll be safe. We'll see.
Yeah, I know this was tanking Mike's hot take that Abram was going to be the safety one for 2021. I will say, though, maybe it's injury insurance. I mean, Abram has been nicked up his first 2 years in the NFL, so it could be like, hey, we've got a heat-seeking missile back there at strong safety, so let's take a guy that, on the very likely chance that Abram gets hurt, we can just plug Diablo right in there, and we know the name is sick as hell, so they're looking at Diablo on the board, and they're like, we got to take this guy. It's just way too sick, this name. So. Yeah.
That jersey will sell nicely if he becomes a starter in Las Vegas.
That's exactly right. So those are the worst landing spots. We wanted to skew negative and end positive. So we've got 10 ideal landing spots here, Jon, and it's a nice mix. We've got some first round guys in here who typically tend to land in good spots. I mean, I think for the most part, I feel like a lot of guys drafted in the first round land in good spots.
Yeah.
But obviously it's hit or miss based on which players go to which teams, but we've picked out some of our favorites here from the entire draft. And we're going to start. Did you do this on purpose to give us a Kentucky boy right off the jump here, Jon, at the top of the list?
Yeah, we got to let Kentucky represent a little bit and put it just at the top. We'll even make him number one officially as the best landing spot.
There we go. Yeah, Jamin Davis landing with the Washington football team, the first round, the 19th overall pick. Jon, fun fact, I just saw this now that the draft had wrapped up. The SEC set a record for the most players drafted in the NFL draft. Do you want to guess how many players it was?
Oh, God. Like 60 to 70?
You're dead on. It was 65, broke the previous record from 2019, and it was 1/4 of all players drafted were from the SEC.
Wow.
It's crazy, right? It's like the NFL's minor league equivalent, to use a baseball analogy. So Jamin Davis, obviously from UK, one of those players selected. I believe it was 11 SEC players in the first round, so over 1/3 of the first round, and 6 of those were from Alabama. So Alabama's obviously doing something right when it comes to college football, but we got our Kentucky boy here, Jamin Davis, landing with the Washington football team. This was one that we showed a lot of love to on the live stream on Thursday, Jon, and it seems like the more that you've thought about it, the more that you really like where Davis landed.
Yeah, for sure. Like initially you're like, oh yeah, this is great. And then the more you think about it, you're like, this seems to be the cleanest situation for all the rookie linebackers coming in. It's Jon Bostic and it's Cole Holcomb ahead of him on the depth chart. Bostic he's not a spring chicken by any means. He's 30 years old already. He's never had a season grade in PFF terms above a 63.4 in his seven-year career. But I think what keeps him sticking around is that he's a good leader. He's a smart player, so he lasts. And I think that keeps his job probably safe as a starter, but I think it hurts Cole Holcomb. I don't think Cole Holcomb's a bad linebacker by any means, but I don't think he's the guy to man your defense, to wear the green dot, etc. So I think it makes Cole Holcomb the odd man out, and Jamin Davis and Jon Bostic can be the guys that get the starting opportunity. And I think Bostic will be out there on every snap as long as he's healthy. He's got the athleticism to cover as well. There's still some things that he can learn, but Ron Rivera's done a pretty good job at taking first round linebackers that he's drafted and turning them into good NFL players. You think about Luke Kuechly, even Shaq Thompson. So I really like Jamin Davis in Washington. I think he could potentially be he'll be in contention for the rookie LB1 at least for this year.
I love it. That was one of the positions of need that we identified. We said Ron Rivera is used to having these legendary linebackers,
Yeah,
between Kuechly and Thomas Davis. And like you said, even Shaq Thompson,
yeah,
not at the same status as those other two
right.
guys, but very good in his own regard. And so you think John Bostic will actually be the one alongside Davis with Cole Holcomb as the odd man out. I always just like to look at the contracts just to see.
Mhm.
John Bostic is 29, Holcomb's 24. The Washington football team can actually save about close to $3 million against the cap if they were to cut Bostic. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to put the best players out on the field, and I do agree with you. I think that will be Bostic and Davis, but it's worth mentioning that sometimes this comes down to financials.
Yep.
And so, would you be shocked if Bostic was out on the street after the draft?
Not that I'd be shocked. I mean, I think I don't see it happening just because, like I said, I think they want somebody that can be a mentor to Jamin Davis, who has only really had 1 year of production, even if it was in the SEC. I think there's still a lot for him to learn. I don't think Cole Holcomb's going to be that guy to mentor him. So I would be a little bit surprised, but I mean, yeah, John Bostic, like you said, he's getting older, and yeah, if this saves them money, I mean, that's a big storyline for NFL teams, right? He's saving cap, especially in a year where the cap went down, right? So
Yeah. So it just depends. I mean, you could see them wanting a youth movement there, going with Holcomb and with Jamin Davis and giving Bostic the boot in order to save that $3 million against the cap. But like you said, you could also want them having that kind of veteran leadership role there with Bostic alongside Davis. But I agree with you. Even with Holcomb there, this does seem like the cleanest landing spot. You don't take a linebacker at 19 unless you plan to plug him in right away, especially too, this isn't like the Cowboys where we've got two guys who are way more proven than either of these other football team linebackers. So I agree with you right now. It's close. I think Micah Parsons, because of the talent, because of the draft capital, and because of the opportunity, this Dallas defense is still not good. So I think they're going to get a lot of snaps and a lot of opportunities for him to make tackles. But yeah, it's Micah Parsons, it's Jamin Davis, it's 1 and 2. You could make a case either way, but I agree with you. I think Davis steps into the cleanest. We at least have to say, like the word, the term you use there. This is the cleanest landing spot.
yeah, yeah.
So let's move now to Richie Grant. Love this name, for the safety that lands with the Atlanta Falcons with the 40th overall pick. Remind me where Mr. Richie Grant played college ball.
Yeah, Central Florida. He played there for 4 years, so he's been there for a long time. He's put a lot of production and plays on tape. He's 23 years old, so he's an older safety coming into the league, but he steps into, I think, the ideal situation for him as a safety in IDP. I kind of wrote up an article about safeties in the pre-draft process, and Richie Grant, who was one of my favorite safeties, I had him as number 2, and I put Atlanta as the ideal fit. He ends up there, so I think he moves into my safety 1 spot for this rookie group, ahead of Trayvon Merrick. There's only Jalen Hawkins ahead of him on the depth chart. He played less than 100 snaps last year. He's a 4th round rookie. Richie Grant's going to come in and be one of the starters on that defense. He had a 90 run defense grade last season for UCF, which was the highest among all the draft eligible safeties. He had a top 5 missed tackle rate at 7.7%, so really strong there. So he can play that box safety role if he needs to. He won't be a liability in run defense, and he can cover as well. He allowed just a 32.2 passer rating when he was targeted last season. So being able to do it all, being versatile. He's not a huge line safety by any means, but he can definitely hit hard, tackle well, play in the box, cover if needed. He'll be playing all over that defense. And yeah, I really like Richie Grant's prospects for 2021 and beyond.
So it's interesting because the safety class last year seemed a lot more loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And you look now, and you just said the reason I see Richie Grant as the safety 1 is because Merrick landed in not an ideal spot. So do you see, in terms of rookie drafts, again, we mentioned these are probably starting tomorrow for some of the sickos out there. Do you see Richie Grant? Where does he fall in the rookie draft? Is he a 4th round pick? Is he a 5th round pick? Is he undrafted?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't think he's undrafted. I think he probably falls third to fourth round. I'd say late, middle to late third, maybe early fourth, depending on what kind of league it is. Like if it's a super flex or something like that as well, where more quarterbacks go, or tight end premium, any of those kind of things play a part as well. Um, but yeah, I could see him still going in those middle rounds. Like if I lock in on a guy at safety that I really like, I think could have potential. I tend to reach for him a little bit earlier just to make sure that I get him. So it would be like early third for me. But I think his ADP should probably be late third, early fourth.
All right, there you go. I want to use this player's the name that we had going into it because it's a really cool story. This was Jason, as we know, Away,
Yep.
from all the singing there on the live stream that we had Thursday. Several beers in, I might add. So that was Jason Oway, the edge rusher who lands in Baltimore with the 31st overall pick. But Jason did something kind of cool after the draft was over. John, he switched his name and is now going by
Odafe Owe.
there you go. So, and I loved it. It was just so cool. I'll tell a story here in just a second, but I loved it because he said people are going to have to learn how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
And I love that. My boss, our CEO at Scribe Media, the company that I work for, he is mixed race. He grew up, could not get any calls back during the entirety of his sales career. Nobody would call him back because his name was Javon. So he switched his name to JT, started getting his calendar booked up, started landing, more callbacks, which is a sad reality that a lot of these kind of, mixed race black players face with these kind of names. Unfortunately, it's kind of an inherent bias or an inherent racism. And so JT recently switched his name to Javon, and he said, I'm going by Javon, damn it. Like, I'm a millionaire. I'm a CEO. It's time the world starts calling me by my given name rather than this name I had to give myself to be successful. And I feel like that's what Jason now, Odafe, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. I'm learning to pronounce it, and that's what we should do. And just tip of the cap, I love this guy for saying you're going to have to learn how to pronounce it because you're going to be saying it a lot. And I feel like IDP managers, we're going to be at the top of the list of people who have to learn how to pronounce this guy's name because he landed in a primo spot with a very good team when it comes to defensive players.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that story. And yeah, and it fits perfectly for Odafe Owe as well. Going to Baltimore, depending on what kind of IDP league you play in as well, I think there might be some, positional designation issues here where he could be classified as a linebacker because of Baltimore's system. But if you're playing in a true position league, he's an edge defender. That's what he's going to do 99% of the time. He's coming out of Penn State where he didn't have any sacks last year, but honestly, it's not really a big deal. I don't put anything towards college production that I think will transfer to the NFL. So for me, his athletic testing and what he put on tape is the more interesting thing. And that's what made him a first round pick in the first place. So he tested in the 99th percentile for 40-yard dash, 98th percentile for his 3-cone, 99th percentile in his broad jump, 96th percentile in his vertical. He just tested off the charts. It was insane.
He's an athletic freak. Was he at the top of who was the analyst that does the freak list?
Bruce Feldman of the Athletic. Yeah, I think he was in there, but it was Kwity Paye that was number one on there. But Jason Owe, I'm pretty sure, was in there as well. And yeah, it shows. He's definitely a raw pass rusher, but you do see those flashes of what he can bring when you're watching him on tape. Like when I rewatched the PFF stream, they were showing kind of highlights of him, and there's really good examples of him kind of chasing down running backs, coming off the backside of the run and coming unblocked and just chasing them down to the sideline for like minimal gains, things like that. And he does win. He wins as a pass rusher. He still had a pass rush grade over 80 in each of his last two seasons at Penn State. And I think he's a really good run defender as well, which I think is a big plus for IDP leagues, because it means he could be more than just a pass rush specialist in the NFL. So you think of somebody like a Yannick Ngakoue who comes on third down or obvious passing downs, and just gets after the passer, but doesn't necessarily have the run defense chops to put up tackles and things like that. I think Owe is better than that in that regard. He'll just have to get better at his pass rush moves and things like that. And I think being in Baltimore specifically, he'll have a good opportunity to do that. It's only Tyus Bowser, Jalen Ferguson, Derek Wolfe maybe ahead of him on the depth chart. So again, being a first round pick, like you said, really helps with your chances of getting on the field. And I think Owe or Dafe Owe will be on the field and be able to get better as a pass rusher. I think the best is yet to come for him.
Yeah, I know you probably still have Jalen Phillips as your number one edge in terms of IDP.
Yeah.
But is Owe in the mix for number two?
Owe, yeah, for true position leagues, I would be considering him as up there. It's close. Him and Kwity Paye. Yeah, I'll have to think about it, but I think, yeah, I think I would put Owe as number two. Yep.
All right. Well, let's talk about maybe the number two guy, maybe the number three guy.
Yep.
But he's number one in my heart because he lands with my Indianapolis Colts. We're talking about Kwity Paye, the edge rusher from Michigan. Lands with the Colts there at pick 21. They were choosing between Darrisaw. That's who me and Connor and pretty much everyone else in the room thought they were going with. They go with Kwity Paye. They had trade offers on the table, apparently, and Chris Ballard said they weren't good enough to not draft Kwity Paye. So this is a guy they really, really like, John. And so tell us why you think he landed in a nice spot there with the Colts.
Yeah. So first of all, like you said, Christian Darrisaw was on the board. Left tackle was a pretty big need for them. The fact that they passed on that to take Kwity Paye should tell you a lot about how much Indianapolis likes them. I didn't know that they turned down trades as well. So that's huge for his stock and what it means for him getting on the field, his chances of getting on the field. They got some good guys, good edge rushers there, whether it's, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Kamoko Toure, Taekwon Lewis, Ben Banogu. They're all guys that they've kind of taken shots on who have been good, not great. They're just, they're guys that will see the field, but I don't think it'll be enough to stop Kwity Paye from being their top edge rusher. Basically, he's another guy too that's really good in run defense. He's had 70 run defense grades of over 76 in each of the past 3 seasons. He's strong, he's athletic, he does so much so well. He just gets better every single season, which, I mean, look, development is not like a linear thing that happens for NFL players, but for him, he has been getting better because he has the physical tools and athleticism, the coachability and stuff like that is huge for him. So he's coming up. And I think, Indianapolis got a really good one, and he'll be a top edge rusher there, I think.
Yeah, that's nice. I like seeing good run defender because that's what's going to keep these guys on the field. Is if they're not an asset, or a liability in some form of defensive responsibility, they're not going to be taken off the field. So the fact that I see that you say this guy has the great run defense grades, great pass rush grades. That means that it sounds like he's a really well-rounded edge rusher.
Yeah. He has only a couple pass rush moves, but those moves he does well, basically, and he's still going to learn more moves and more versatility in the NFL. But yeah, he's well-rounded for sure. He's got power and athleticism to keep him on the field in run defense and on passing down. So yeah, it's a really nice fit for Paye.
I love it. Well, let's keep it rolling here and talk about Michael Bolton's brother, as we found out from Bobby, Nick Bolton, the linebacker who lands with the Kansas City Chiefs in the second round at pick 58. Remind me, John, on Nick Bolton. Where did he play?
Mizzou.
All right. Great journalism school. So maybe he was a journalism grad, who knows?
Maybe.
But what do you like about his landing spot? I think you were actually a Bolton fan, weren't you, going into the draft?
Yeah. He was on my guys list. Definitely one of my favorite players to watch out of any linebacker or any player in this entire draft class, just because of his style of play. Like, it's not necessarily the best to translate for NFL value because he's not amazing in coverage or anything, but he flies sideline to sideline. He hits hard. He attacks his gaps aggressively. He's one of the first players to the ball carry on almost every single play. So he plays fast, even though he may not have that elite speed necessarily, a straight line speed. But I'm a big fan of Nick Bolton. I like the landing spot of Kansas City. I don't know exactly kind of what it does to Willie Gay's value because I am a big Willie Gay fan as well. He was a second round pick last year who barely saw the field. And he barely saw the field because of being a rookie, but also because the Chiefs played so much dime defense. They played one linebacker quite a bit, third most in the NFL. And I know we were talking about this kind of in the DMs with Mike and with Joey as well, that it could have been a personnel thing where they just didn't have the linebackers, and they didn't because their linebacker core was terrible last year. So they didn't have the linebackers maybe to play that base defense or play two linebackers in nickel. We'll see. I think there's the smart teams are trying to get faster on defense and put more DBs on the field than linebackers. But I think you got a guy like Nick Bolton who, could stuff the run well if you need him to. He could play sideline to sideline, like I said, but you have Willie Gay as well, who's a good coverage linebacker. So there is reason to believe that they can get both of them on the field. But I think for Nick Bolton specifically, I think he comes in right away and he's the best linebacker on that team all around. So if he doesn't see the field more than any other linebacker on that team, I would be shocked.
So I think there's two scenarios here, it seems like, is that the Chiefs plan to run more dime and Nick Bolton is going to be the guy and not Willie Gay. Or right. They could be switching to a scenario where they have two linebackers on the field and it's going to be Willie Gay alongside Nick Bolton. If you were putting money on it, Jon, which of those two situations would you say is most likely?
Oh, God. If I was putting money on it, just kind of learning from last year's defense, Steve Spagnuolo, I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. I think they have the players on the team to run more of that dime defense again, with guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill at safety. I think Daniel Sorensen's still there, and I think they still like him for whatever reason. So I think he'll still play that third safety role. God, my my heart says that Willie Gay is going to get on the field more. My head is telling me to take it easy on that one for a little bit.
So this might be a good time to sell Willie Gay if you're holding him, because what if it is? What if it's dime and Nick Bolton's the guy and Willie Gay still sees a marginal amount of snaps and you're holding an asset that, it happens. Like we're big Willie Hatterow fans as well. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes these coaches don't maybe there's a reason Willie Gay didn't get on the field as much as what we think he should have. And it's because the coaches behind the scenes don't think he works hard enough or don't think he knows the playbook enough, or maybe I don't know. There's something else going on behind the scenes that make them take a guy like Nick Bolton there in the second round. I don't know. Our boy DFF Trip is doing a great thread right now on Twitter about winners and losers. So I'm curious to see if go check it out. If you're watching this, pull up Twitter on your phone, check out the thread that Trip's got going. I'll be curious to see if he lists Willie Gay as a loser in that column. So are you just holding Gay hoping that maybe a really talented player can find his way on the field?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to probably do. I don't know if I want to sell him. I might even try to buy him like really low just because the Nick Bolton, like people watching that own Willie Gay see the Nick Bolton pick and kind of immediately get scared. I might try to buy really low in hopes that, he does get on the field and that they don't play as much dime defense as they did. But I think for the most part, I'm probably just going to hold him and hope for the best. And you're right, though, in mentioning behind the scenes stuff. I think that was an issue with him at Mississippi State when he was there. So, we'll see with Willie Gay. But Nick Bolton, for me, is the clear LB1 in Kansas City.
All right, from one LB1 to another, maybe, if not LB2 overall for this IDP class. He certainly was LB1 going in. Landing spot makes it a little murky, but it seems like you have warmed up to the idea of Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons landing with the Dallas Cowboys there with the 12th overall pick. What has changed? Because we were a little lukewarm on Thursday, so why have you warmed up to this landing spot?
Yeah, so just kind of like taking a step back and thinking about it, thinking about what the Cowboys defense looked like last year. It wasn't a good defense. They picked Micah Parsons 12th overall. He was the clear LB1 for this class, and you see it, like he is the best linebacker in this class. He'll be the best linebacker on the Cowboys. I know Jalen Smith, he's still good, even though he didn't have the best year last year, but Micah Parsons is in a different mold. He does every single thing well. He had a 94.8 run defense grade in 2019. He opted out of 2020, but that is incredibly high, one of the highest grades we've ever given since we started grading college. Along with like a 91.6 overall grade, a 90 tackling grade, 86.8 pass rush grade, just elite numbers across the board. And I think for this hurts Van Der Esch more so than any other player on the Cowboys. I think Micah Parsons is going to come on for a team like Dallas that's in like a win now mode. I think he's going to come on and play every snap. I do believe that. I think he's good enough to do that. And obviously I think the Cowboys will believe that as well.
Yeah. We've talked about Micah Parsons a lot. We know that this is a player who is supremely talented. And in the NFL, a lot of times talent wins out overall. So whether it's Van Der Esch gets hurt or he just simply outplays Van Der Esch, I do expect Micah Parsons. Is it the cleanest landing spot like a Jamin Davis? No. Would we have I would have loved to have seen him land in a place like Denver or Carolina. We talked about this. There were maybe some more ideal spots out there, but Dallas, they like to do this. They like to go best player on the board. They like to make splashy moves. This is what Jerry Jones is all. They like to sell jerseys. They like to have players they can put on the front of the program. CeeDee Lamb fit that bill last year. Micah Parsons fits that bill. And they knew they had to work on this defense because you've got the offense pretty well set now. But my Lord, this defense was god awful last year. And so credit to the Cowboys. It was a little bit of a head scratcher, but for IDP, it doesn't look like it's the death knell that maybe we initially thought for Micah Parsons' IDP value. He should be fine there. But let's move to a linebacker that lands with another linebacker-needy team. The Los Angeles Rams in the third round at pick 103 draft Ernest Jones. Let me ask you, John, I don't know if this was just like an American thing or if it made its way north across the border. Did you all have Ernest movies growing up?
I do remember the Ernest movies. Yeah, they did exist. There was like 100
so
of
many.
them?
Oh, so many. It was
Ernest
just like
every situation possible.
Yes. Ernest goes to the bus stop. Ernest, goes to the DMV. Is in the drive-through at Taco Bell. That was actually my favorite, drive-through at Taco Bell. No, but my legit favorite was the Halloween special where the gnomes come out and they turn his dog into like a little wooden dog statue and they have to put milk into squirt guns to beat these. It's the most insane movie. Like if you want to get drunk and watch a really fun Halloween movie, I think it's Ernest Scared Stupid or something like that.
Okay, it sounds familiar. I think, yeah.
It's really, really bad. But I just see Ernest and I have to bring up that, that film classic there. So let's talk about Ernest Jones, the linebacker who lands with the Rams. What do we like about this guy?
Yeah, so for this one, I mean, I'm basically going strictly with the landing spot here. I didn't get to watch any Ernest Jones in the pre-draft process because I thought, there wasn't anything that really stood out about him when looking at the PFF grades, looking at the numbers and things like that. He was a strong tackler. That was about it. He had an 83.0 tackling grade, but his coverage grades were like in the 60s. Which you do see for college linebackers. But going to the Rams on day 2 is what kind of piques my interest. The Rams, to me, were the most linebacker needy team in the NFL coming into this draft. And I think no matter who was going to land there, I was hoping it would be somebody better that, I had a higher rank on in my list, but it ends up being Ernest Jones. His competition consists of Micah Kiser, Troy Reeder, and Kenny Young. So he only needs to be better than those 3 guys, which I don't think is very hard. He's going to be in a good spot, a sneaky spot to kind of produce right away in year 1. as long as they don't bring anybody else in.
Yeah, as we know, Troy, Get Your Reader
Like,
had Get Your Reader had a nice moment in the sun. Enough so that the big three gave him a video there on Twitter. But yeah, that's not a linebacker room that strikes fear in the heart of Ernest Jones, especially when he has stared down trolls that turned his dog into a little wooden statue. So I don't know anything about Ernest Jones, so we're going to keep it moving and talk about an edge rusher that landed in Miami, went from Miami, and that sick ass turnover chain to the Miami Dolphins, which sneaky, I mean, they're going to be in the mix, right, for the AFC East there with the Buffalo Bills. This is a team that I like what they've done this offseason. I liked their draft. I think they're putting the talent around Tua to succeed and trying to improve this defense. It's kind of interesting. They've been talking around the NFL podcast. This team is churning through a lot of players, a lot of coaches. Like they said that the head coach there,
Brian Flores.
Thank you. I get him and Robert Saleh confused. That Flores has churned through like 3 defensive coordinators since he's been there.
Oh wow.
It's a situation where, or maybe it's offensive and defensive coordinators, but they churn through players quickly, and I think it's because he took over a really bad team. He's been trying to build this roster on the fly, but now they're getting to the point where they're actually starting to stack a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. And you and I both on the stream on Thursday loved the landing spot here for Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher out of Miami, landing there with the Dolphins. Is he your defensive end one? I mean, I know we were just having this discussion with Owe, but he in my mind was the biggest winner from round 1 in terms of IDP, because who's there, John? Who is his competition in Miami right now?
Andrew Van Ginkel.
we know that hair is sick, and that's an awesome name, but no, Van Ginkel is not exactly making me think that Jalen Phillips is going to be riding the pine.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, I think he's going to come right in and start across from Ogba. I can easily see Jalen Phillips kind of filling in for Shaq Lawson last year. Shaq Lawson, who was like more of like a reclamation project for the Miami Dolphins last year, played like 600 snaps. Jalen Phillips can come in and play those snaps easily as long as he's healthy. That was one of the things that was, a worry for him, a red flag, whatever, was the concussions. He retired in 2019 after leaving UCLA, but came back in Miami. And I mentioned this on the stream. We don't have to go over it too much, but I do think he's the most polished pass rusher in this class, wins in the most amount of ways compared to anybody else in this class. He does everything well across the board, similar to the Micah Parsons, not as to such an elite level as Micah Parsons in grading well across the board, but he does it better than I think anybody else as far as run defense, tackling, pass rush, stuff like that. So he's definitely my top defensive end for this group.
Love it. And we also got to give a shout out to our boy DFF Trip. He's tuned in watching right now and commented on Twitter. He said he'd planned to stump for Ernest Jones to the Packers on the Team Needs pod that we did, but had a total brain cramp and mentioned Riley Cole instead with the sad, embarrassed face. He said Ernest Jones is value play number 1 for IDP right now.
Yeah, I like that call, Trip. Yep.
So cosign there from our boy DFF Trip. We love that. Keep doing the good work tonight on the Twitter, Trip. I'm really enjoying these winners and losers thread that you are putting out. That is a pod that we are going to try to do at some point for the big 3 is veteran winners and losers based on the NFL draft. But Jalen Phillips, not a loser, definitely a winner, especially with that landing spot there. Now, defensive tackle. We heard going into the draft, this wasn't necessarily the best draft for defensive tackle if you were in the market for one of those players. The top of the mountain was Christian Barmore, and he ends up, it pains me to say this, in New England there, the second round, pick number 38, John. So that's a nice spot. And I think if you're in a D-tackle required league, which we advocate for with Big 3, we do love D-tackle required leagues. Is Christian Barmore, like, where is he? Like, is he top 12 consideration based on this landing spot, or maybe 12 to 15, D tackle 2? Where are you seeing him?
Yeah, so amongst the rest of the group, I'd have to think about it. I think, oh man, I would consider him maybe like around 15, the 15th IDP, around there. Especially if you're playing in a DT premium league, there are those where they award more tackles and more points for tackles and stuff for defensive tackles. But he's up there just because, yeah, I think the landing spot is really nice for him. He fell in the draft because of, like they said, character and coachability concerns were some of the things coming out with him. But he went to Alabama. Nick Saban was his coach there. Bill Belichick and Nick Saban know each other pretty well, I would say. So Belichick, I'm sure, got the full rundown for Barmore, who he is, and when he fell to him. I mean, that's kind of a steal for this draft. I think NFL value and for IDP. I know they have Devon Gotcho that they brought in this year. Might play more of like a nose tackle role. We'll see. I don't know. But Barmore, I could see him playing 500 to 600 snaps as a rookie. He was the clear DT1 from this class. He ranked first, basically in all the signature stats for PFF: pass rush grade, overall, pressures, pass rush win rate, all of those things for defensive tackles. Barmore was number one in 2020.
Yeah, it's a typical Bill Belichick move to grab the kind of underrated guy that's probably going to slide right in, even though typically he's more in love with drafting a DB from a school that nobody's ever heard of in the second round. So you love to see him switch it up a little bit, or a wide receiver who's not going to make the team 3 years from now. But you love to see him go and take the best available player at a position of need. I didn't realize they had brought in Godchow. That's actually a guy from Miami who's not the best defensive tackle in the world, but gives them some nice depth there, if nothing else.
Yep.
So,
yeah, sure.
All right, to wrap things up here, we're looking at, I know a name that was at least getting floated there at the end of the first when we were playing the guessing game of who's going to land with these last few teams. I think it was Buffalo, Baltimore, and then Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Azeez Ojulari was the guy that was floated a lot, actually lasted until the second round, pick 50, and ends up with the Giants. You had mentioned, I think, the Giants were a team that could potentially be looking for an upgrade at defensive end. So it looks like that's the position that we see Ojulari playing, you think?
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely one of those like speed rusher guys. Watching him in Georgia, standing up on the edge and just blowing past the outside of offensive tackles. So he did that probably better than any other pass rusher in college football last year. Was his outside speed move was one of the nicest ones that in this entire class. And it showed in his grades as well. So he had a 91.7 pass rush grade, which was first among all SEC edge defenders. He had a 24% pass rush win rate as well. So he's winning like his reps a quarter of the time. And again, like, you're looking at the depth chart in New York there for the Giants, and it's basically Leonard Williams. So Leonard Williams is going to start, but other than that, it's O'Shane Ximenez, Lorenzo Carter, Carter Coughlin. None of these guys are going to keep Ojulari off the field, even if you think he's just a pass rush specialist, which I don't think he is. He's solid in run defense as well. He plays mostly kind of a C gap outside contained type role, but he's not a liability in that regard. So that's kind of the nice thing with him. And I think that's what separates him from, like, again, to bring him up, Yannick Ngakoue or somebody like that.
Yeah. John, let me ask you, these PFF grades and some of the things that you all track when you're watching the film, I'm curious if there's one stat for edge rushers that you put more stock and weight in than any other, because just as a newbie, somebody who does not watch the film and grade these players on every play, it seems like the win rate, that kind of pass rush win rate stat really stands out to me, because we always talk about follow the snaps, follow the pressures, don't necessarily look at the sacks, because that can be a little misleading in terms of guys who, for IDP purposes, are bound to blow up. And it seems like if a player is winning on a quarter of his pass rush snaps, that's pretty indicative of a guy that could have potential for like double-digit sack season in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I tend to go towards that win rate. The pressures is a really good one as well, but not all pressures are created equal too. There's cleanup, there's unblocked pressures, things like that to kind of keep an eye out and kind of get context behind. But the win rate, how often these guys are beating their blocks is pretty key for me. So that's a big one, and that's pretty. It weighs heavily on the PFF pass rush grade as well. So I use that one to kind of get an idea of just a general sense of how often they're winning. Even if it doesn't necessarily generate a pressure, their wins. Like they can do that. They can beat their blocker within 2 seconds, but the ball is out just as fast. So there's no pressure on the play. So that's why something like a pass rush win rate is kind of a nice stat to keep handy if you're looking for future success and things like that, especially in the SEC where it's top level competition too. So
that's right. We saw many of these SEC players got drafted.
Yeah.
Quarter of the draft was SEC. So if you're doing that against SEC offensive linemen, SEC quarterbacks, you're doing pretty darn well.
Yeah.
So I asked you this question, Jon. This is a question that we posed to Mike at the end of the preview pod on Tuesday. Now that we know where these guys have landed, we've had a little bit of time to sit and digest their landing spots. We mentioned drafts are going to be starting here very soon, if they haven't already. So knowing where these guys are likely to fall in rookie drafts, who do you think will be your most rostered player in 2021 from this rookie class?
Oh, most rostered player. So this is tough because we have a draft coming up. So this is tipping my hat a little bit. But I want to say Jalen Phillips, but I think everybody's going to be in on Jalen Phillips as the top edge, or at least close to it. And if not, it will be Jalen Phillips. But it's going to be between probably Nick Bolton and Zaven Collins for me.
All right. Yeah. Zaven was a guy we didn't talk about.
Right.
But it seems like he's going to be maybe taking that Jordan Hicks role.
Yeah.
So not exactly evaporating Isaiah Simmons' value. I was going to say, yeah, maybe for me, Nick Bolton or this Ernest Jones fella. Because if you have, for me, it's like, okay, even though this isn't necessarily the most hyped up player, who's landing in a spot where you've just got to beat out a couple Jags?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's a guy, Ernest Jones, you could probably get like in your 4th or 5th round of your rookie drafts. So for me, it's always who are the guys? Because I typically, if this guy is there, he's going to be in consideration for me, because what if he's the starting linebacker there? We saw, like I said, Troy, get your reader. Troy Reader had a moment in the sun for IDP managers last season. So imagine if a superior player can come in and take this role away and earn a 3-down opportunity, man, that's pretty nice for a price that you're going to not have to pay a lot for in rookie drafts.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good call. Yeah, just guys that are in a good position to produce, and because of their opportunity are nice to kind of swoop up at the end of rookie drafts that maybe most people aren't paying attention to because they're not names that received a lot of attention in the pre-draft process. So Ernest Jones, is a perfect example of that. It's a good call.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up here, Jon, you've seen the promo code on the screen here from Manscaped. It's Big 3 IDP. Jon, you actually just placed your order for Manscaped. They ship to Canada, and you got the free shipping, and you got the 20% off. So I know you're excited to get your Manscaped package there in the mail here, hopefully this next week.
Oh yeah, gonna get you smooth. Really excited. Hopefully, it comes soon. It's nice to know that they ship to Canada too. So for our Canadian listeners, I know we have at least a few. Manscaped Big 3 IDP, beautiful promo code, 20% off, right?
20% off plus free shipping. They also ship to Europe. We have one of our listeners over there who was asking, okay, what about my country? They ship to Europe as well. So go check it out. Use the promo code. I was talking to a buddy of mine tonight. He's like, I wear boxers and I have a really hard time because he has big muscular thighs. And I'm like, dude, I've switched to briefs recently. These Manscaped briefs are awesome. You should really check them out. They're very stretchy. So even if you have these giant tree trunk thighs, they should be able to fit because they are very well designed and they're very comfortable. So go check them out. We are big, big fans of Manscaped. Use the promo code Big3IDP, get 20% off plus free shipping. As Jon said, we're going to get you smooth. We're going to get you right below the waist. Jon, I have to imagine your Canadian friends are like, you're hanging out with these Kentucky boys a little too much. They are making you dumber. You just used the word get you.
A lot of it is rubbing off for sure. I tell my wife a lot that Our son, if she asks where he is, I'll yell down yonder in the holler or something like that. So.
Down yonder in the holler. Now, yeah, that's not a place where you want your kid to be, because Lord only knows what is happening down in the holler. Hopefully the creek is not rising, but if it's getting close to dinner time, you can ask your wife, Jeet? That's another really good one that we like to tell our foreign listeners. Jeet, Jeet. And of course that translates to, did you eat? And anytime you can make 3 words into 4 letters, John, you got to do it. Ain't nobody got time to say, did you eat? But you got plenty of time to say, Jeet.
That's incredible. Yep, going to use it.
So if you want to sound really dumb, use these Kentucky phrases, folks. It is guaranteed to make you sound at least 25% stupider. That's the Big 3 promise. We're going to get you smooth, and we're going to make you sound really dumb with all your friends. Well, John, thank you, my friend, for coming on. I know it's been a long but fun 3 days here with the NFL draft, and I appreciate you educating our listeners here about which landing spots were ideal and which were not so ideal for IDP. And let the fun begin, John. It's rookie draft season. The NFL draft is over. Now this is what we have to look forward to. This is when the season really starts to kick into high gear.
Yep, absolutely. I can't wait. It's my favorite time of the year. I love the rookie draft. I love the NFL draft. So bring it on. I'm going to be doing as many rookie drafts as I can in the next few months for sure.
All right. And we will probably have you back on the show. We're going to do a recap pod of our XFFL rookie draft. That's your league, the league that you're in with us in the Big 3. So we'll probably have you back on to see how many times you got sniped by either me, Adam, or Bobby.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Thank you to our patrons. We appreciate you all. And be sure to check out manscaped.com, promo code Big3IDP. We will see you all next week. Bobby is going to be hosting with our buddy Zach Ryle, and they are going to continue this draft coverage. So tune in. You do not want to miss that episode. Thank you all for checking us out this week. We appreciate all the love. And y'all take care, and we will see you all next week.